Newark, building a stronger, safer, prouder city.
Our most pressing issue in the city right now is public safety. That's what we're going to be talking about coming up next on From the Mayor's Desk. All over our nation, we are seeing cities face crushing economic times. From coast to coast, from Los Angeles to New York, tremendous cutbacks as a result of the worst economy we have seen in over 70 years. Here in New Jersey, we're no different. The state is cutting back aid to cities from the top to the bottom of New Jersey. We here in Newark have lost well over $100 million in state aid, Port Authority revenue, and other revenue coming in that has been reduced as a result of the economy. These are difficult times. We've taken some pretty strong steps, from furloughing city employees, going through layoffs, as well as people working now 4-day work weeks. We've frozen spending and we've frozen contracts, all to make sure that we can endure these difficult financial times. We've been able to close a large amount of our structural budget deficit, but this year we faced what was unthinkable, which was a major shortfall that resulted in a cutback in public safety. Now, cities all across New Jersey are cutting back their police departments in difficult ways. Camden is facing up to losing half of their police department. Trenton has faced a loss of about 1/3 of their police officers. From Patterson to Jersey City to even small towns right now, they're cutting back on public safety because public safety is actually the largest part of municipal budgets. It makes up over 60% of our entire city spend. And so here in the city of Newark, we fought hard to avoid this. The best progress we've seen over the last 4 years has been incredible gains in reducing violent crime in the city of Newark. Nowhere near where we should be or could be, but it was progress nonetheless, and in fact made us one of the cities that was noted by even the White House as seeing significant gains in public safety. But this year, with a $9.5 million shortfall, we went to the tables with our police union, asking them to work with us to help make sure we didn't lose one police officer from our communities, from our streets. Unfortunately, the police union, after every other union in the city was willing to work with us, making small givebacks to avoid layoffs, the police union leadership said, no deal, no go. We're not going to give back $100, $10, $1, 1 cent when it comes to public safety. Go ahead and lay our membership off. It was probably one of the most difficult things I've had to do as a leader ever, was to see our sworn officers, young people from our city dedicated to protecting our streets, lose their jobs. 164 people were laid off. And now it comes to us to be able to figure out a plan, not to let fear set in, but to be a city that lets focus set in. Because I know in my heart that we can come together as a city and work through this challenge, and in fact continue to gain necessary ground in advancing public safety. This is something that we can do, and we must do, and we must do it together. Today I have the leader of our police department here with me, Gary McCarthy, and I have to give him some compliments, Gary, because during this tough fiscal time, you are probably considered one of the best tacticians when it comes to crime fighting in America, having had the incredible gains in New York City, the gains we've had in Newark over the last 4 years. But what I didn't know is you had such skill in budget cutting. And you actually streamlined the agency. You cut $13 million out, reduced overtime, eliminated contracts, found ways to make the department run so much more smoothly in hopes that we could avoid this layoff. And in fact, you put us in a position where we thought we were going to have a win with the police union, because you put us in a position where the guys didn't have to give that much back. In fact, I was talking about the tax cuts that President Obama did, that put money back in the payroll tax. If the police officers just gave up the money they got from this recent Obama tax cut, we could have saved all of our police officers. But they weren't willing to do that, and we had to lay off 164 cops. But immediately, you came forward with a plan. You said, Mayor, we can't afford to lose officers on our streets. So we're going to reorganize the agency so that we push our agency entirely down and get more cops on the streets. Now, I say that to some people, and they say, well, how does that make sense? How do you lose 164 officers and maintain the troop strength in the precincts and maintain patrols on the streets? Can you explain how did you pull that off?
The traditional policing organization is broken down into bureaus, kind of like pyramids. You have a deputy chief on top of a operations bureau, and he has staff folks working for him there, and then below that there's more staff folks until you finally get down to the precinct where the rubber meets the road. So that's in operations. Then in detectives you had the same structure. Gang and narcotics, the same structure. What we did was we flattened the agency. We put the deputy chiefs in command of precincts, which are now called bureaus, because all available resources, patrol, narcotics, and detectives, are reporting to that one person in that geographic area. In effect, eliminating the staffing levels that were in between the ground and the chief.
And many of the staffing levels, there weren't cops on the streets. So we eliminated these people that were not doing patrol jobs,
right,
and were, in a sense, took all those savings and invested them in street patrol.
That's correct.
And so
that was only part of it, Mayor. I'm sorry to interrupt you. But other things we did, like we cut every part of the agency has felt a shrinkage. We took people out of detective bureaus. We took people out of traffic. We eliminated our mounted unit, our aviation unit. All of these major cost-cutting efforts to save that $13 million, to try and put us in a position where we could save everything.
Right. And I remember in our conversations, you were like, everything has to come down to now what is keeping people safe.
Right.
The mounted police officers are great for, should we have crowds, parades, people love them in the communities.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, they weren't as valuable as a beat cop or a patrol person riding through the neighborhoods.
That's correct.
Yeah, so you made tough decisions, and we reorganized our agency. And explain to me what it means then to have as much, if not more, people in the precincts. What is that going to mean every day out in our streets?
Well, we have basically the same amount of people on patrol. What hurts us is not spending overtime on events like festivals, because normally we would staff those on overtime, where now we're taking a couple from here and a couple from there. So in essence, we have virtually the same amount of people on the streets. The second thing that's actually better, I think, is we took our most experienced commanders and we put them where the rubber meets the road. We have our deputy chiefs who hold the highest rank in the agency in uniform, who are now in these precinct bureaus with all available resources reporting to them right there, so they could say, okay, narcotics, go here and do this. Detectives, go investigate that. I'm going to deploy my patrol people here. Whereas before, they were a couple of levels removed from that, and I think this is going to help us also.
And I really wish people, and maybe one day we should take cameras in and show people what CompStat really looks like, because you ran CompStat for New York City for 7 of their most productive years in crime reduction. I witnessed CompStat when I was a council person, but I witnessed what you did when I was a mayor, is really transform it. And so I like your theory of management, is sort of what I believe in, which is you push authority and responsibility down to the people that are actually doing the job. But then during these CompStat meetings, you hold them accountable for results with real-time data. Right. And I see what you pull up on maps. You say, well, there's been a rash of burglary here. You map them out. What has been your response? And you can actually measure the performance of down to the individual officer and what they're doing out there to address those problems, and look at things in terms of what are your crime strategies.
Yeah, everything gets measured from time of day, day of week, of the incident to time and day of week, of our response to it, whether it's quality of life enforcement, whether it's deploying police officers into that neighborhood, whether it's field interrogations, all of these things that we measure, we make sure that we're putting the cops on the dots at the right times, at the right places, with the right tools.
So help me understand this, and I want to, before we get into the other strategies, because this is not the only one we've done to meet this financial crisis. One of your many strategies has been to push officers into the streets, and I want to get back to some of the other strategies. But let's just be clear, we are seeing right now, in this year as a whole, not a result of the layoffs, but as a trend, we're seeing a spike in burglaries and robberies. And we're not the only city seeing that. All around us, cities are seeing it, and from coast to coast, cities are dealing with spikes in burglaries and robberies. So what are we doing? And I've heard this, friends of mine have called me up and said, look, my car got broken into, or there was a home break-in. What are we doing now to meet this challenge? What strategies are you applying to deal with that?
Well, the first thing we're doing is what you said, which is CompStat, which is putting those cops at the places where they're supposed to be, doing those right things at the right times. The second thing that we're doing is we're creating force multipliers by working closely with our federal, state, and local enforcement partners. For instance, the FBI and the county prosecutor just formed a task force to address robberies and carjackings. We're going to take people who we arrest for carjacking, and we're going to take them federally. And that does a couple of things. First of all, they get a lot of time. Second of all, they go to places, as Armando Fontoura says, far, far away.
Right.
They're not going to the local lockup where their friends can come and visit them.
Well, we saw this with gun crimes. As soon as we started taking a lot of them federally, it actually had an impact in driving down gun violence in our city. And now you're saying that we're going to take people who do other crimes federal as well.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's another strategy. And one is reorienting the agency, getting more cops on the street. The second one is these partnerships.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit more about, which I think is really impressive, what you're doing with federal agencies and state agencies, and what is this thing that we're doing called VEST?
Okay, we we created a forum probably right after I got here, working closely with the Drug Enforcement Administration to coordinate our narcotics enforcement in the city. There's about 9 different agencies that are doing narcotics enforcement in the city. And the fact is, it really wasn't coordinated and it wasn't targeted towards reducing violence. Simply doing narcotics enforcement does not reduce violence. You have to take out markets wholesale. You have to hold on to the territory and not give it back.
And let me just emphasize that point, because just doing street level buy and busts does not mean that you get rid of the drug dealing.
No.
What it really means, you have to stay and do undercovers, surveillance, and really understand what's happening in the entire drug market.
Casework.
And then pull out the entire drug. This is what we did in Garden Spires, for example,
Correct.
or Pennington Court, for example.
Yes.
Places that used to be known for drug violence and drug activities. We went and studied the processes and pulled everybody out and reclaimed the territory within our city.
That's correct. And I mean, one of the analogies that I use, or one of the terms that I use is, you know, it's easy for narcotics investigators to get caught up chasing the kilo fairy. They want to buy up and they want to go find Pablo Escobar. They want to seize, you know, 10, 20, 100 kilos. But simply seizing narcotics and making arrests doesn't necessarily apply to the crime problem.
Right.
So taking out those markets, improving the quality of life all at the same time, seizing guns, making cases against people so that they go away for longer terms
So what
makes
else,
a difference.
What else can you say that residents are watching this at home and saying, look, I've heard about these layoffs, I've heard about crime in the city, I'm concerned what's happening. So I hear you saying that you're pushing more officers to the streets. I hear you saying you're creating more robust relationships with police officers. What else could you tell me as a resident who is concerned about crime in the city of Newark, in a down economy, concerned about crime in the city of Newark with the loss of police officers? What are the other strategies we're bringing to bear?
Well, we also started a gun task force with the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. We are now working on gun trafficking cases into the city. Guns are not manufactured here. They're not manufactured here. They come from places like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Florida, South Carolina, Virginia, up 95, the Iron Pipeline, and into the city. We've created now a task force working with the state police and the ATF, where we're measuring gun trafficking cases, looking for patterns, and taking cases out of state, and again doing federal prosecutions on those levels to intercept the guns. If you think about it, you can't just put your thumb over the garden hose and expect it to stop on this end. You have to nip it at that end at the same time.
Right.
So that's one thing that we're doing.
And the other thing, and I hear this from residents, again, I'm really wanting the residents at home to understand how we're trying to change the agency, not only to meet the diminution of police officers, but to advance us. One of the biggest issues I hear all the time is, hey, I called the police, or a friend of mine called the police, and dear God, it took them an hour and a half to show up. So what are we doing to reduce response time, and how are we going to, and this is an opportunity for us to educate people. Like, I've had some people complain to me, I got into a fender bender, and I called the police, and it took them forever to come. And I say to them, don't call the police on a fender bender. You don't need, your insurance company doesn't require a pull one of my cops out of the queue or out of there doing their jobs to come to a fender bender when there's no injury and not that much of an accident. So these are things we got to tell our residents. But you have a great strategy which we've just deployed, which in a very short time is already seeing us help reduce queue time or waiting time about 20%, or pull 20% of the calls. Would you explain that a little bit and give some people, again, more indications that we're making progress?
We created a telephone reporting system, which quite frankly I'm not crazy about. I don't like the idea. The problem is 51% of our calls for service are not emergency calls. So what'll happen is the officer gets tied up on a vehicle accident where you could just go and make a report yourself at the precinct where there's no injury and property damage. That call for service will take that officer up to an hour to handle. So now when another call comes in, it gets stacked up in the queue, it lengthens our response time. So calls for service such as vehicle accidents, property damage only, are not being responded to. We're taking complaints over the phone for simple theft.
Well, when you say not being responded to, they're being responded to.
We're directing people that they could go to the station house, they could make the report personally, unless there's an emergency or an injury.
Right. And then the second thing, so that, and then you're also doing callbacks on situations, and we're using our cameras as well.
Correct. There's really three components to it. There's telephone reporting for about 6 different levels, simple property crimes, criminal mischief, and stuff like that. The second thing is we're using our cameras to respond to 911 calls. When we have somebody sitting behind a desk, you get a disorderly group on the corner of whatever, Broad and Market. They could look at the camera, they could see that there's nobody there. They will make the call back. If you don't need the police for anything else, boom, we take that call out of the queue if they're not there, because many times they were already gone.
Right. And how can you educate folks on 911 calls? In other words, you said 50%, please understand that, of the calls for 911 are really not emergency calls.
Right.
What are some other examples of things? Again, don't call for a fender bender, or don't expect a police to come out. Call and let them know, and we can do a report over the phone, or you can go down to the precinct. What are some other high offenders that you have?
Blocked driveways.
Right.
Blocked driveways, you call 6,000 for that, and we'll get a police car there eventually, but it's not on top of our calls for service.
Right.
Perhaps a noise complaint, which is annoying. It's a quality of life complaint, but it's not an in-progress crime.
Right.
So they fall down to the bottom of the priority scale.
Right, and when I've visited communications before, I've seen calls for somebody calling 911 because somebody's blocking a fire hydrant.
Right.
And these are the things that really clog up our system and often impede us from doing patrols, as well as responding to other more urgent crimes.
Right. So using those three tactics right now, we've taken about 20% of our calls for service out of the queue, which lightens the load on the officers, which means that now they can do more affirmative police work rather than just responding to calls for service.
Right.
They can engage a group of kids hanging on a corner drinking beer or listening to a loud radio and issue quality of life summonses and recover guns and prevent people from getting shot.
Right, which was your shift in the agency when we came in.
Correct.
And this is people need to understand. So if you call for a blocked fire hydrant, for a blocked driveway, if you call when you get to a fender bender, when you force the police to respond to things like that, they're not doing the kind of work which is preventative crime, stopping people who are loitering on street corners, doing field interrogations and things like that, which we know when we do that, we often catch people with records, we catch weapons and things like that. And that's really what we want our police officers doing, is not just responding to crime when it happens, but more importantly, being proactive in preventing crime from happening in the first place.
Correct.
So here we have an agency that has been employing a lot of tactics over the last 4 years. Your fugitive apprehension team, not waiting for somebody else when somebody breaks parole to get out there and do something. Beginning quality of life enforcement, open air drinking of a container. Look, if somebody's just drinking a beer on the street corner, that's illegal, but it's not something we should just drive by.
Right.
Write them a ticket, but also see, does that person have a warrant? We've caught people with guns who are violating that as well. So your quality of life strategies, your partnerships with other agencies, which are really, really impressive. A whole list of things we've been doing year after year to get progress. And what's impressive, and this is what got the White House's attention and had Obama inviting both us to come down and talk to other people about how we could have 4 sustained years of 10% or more reductions in shootings. Now, you and I both know when we went from, I think, about 435 shootings in 2006 to, by the end of 2009, in the 200s.
Right.
That's still 200 plus people shot, even though it's a 40% reduction.
Right.
This year, we're actually going to see a little uptick from last year.
Yes.
Nowhere near where we were in 2006 or 7, but we're seeing a little bit of an uptick. And so some of these new strategies you're doing are important so that in 2011, we can continue that downward push that our residents have every right to demand in partnership with us. There's a strategy that you haven't mentioned yet that I wanted you to give a little bit of flavor. I know we're going to be doing some press around it in the future, but this idea of ceasefire and what's going on there.
Ceasefire is it's based on something that really was created by a fellow named David Kennedy, who works at the John Jay School for Criminal Justice in Boston in 1996. It's called the Boston Ceasefire Model. And it really revolves around 3 components. It revolves around law enforcement. We're going to continue to do what we've been doing, which is work cases on narcotics groups. But there's 2 other parts to it. There's a second part where you take folks who have probation or who have parole, who are in these groups, in these violent street gangs, in these violent narcotics groups. Those folks that you have a hook into, you bring them to what's known as a call-in. And at the call-in, there's really 3 messages that they receive. The first one is from law enforcement. If you continue what you're doing, we're going to come down on you. The second one is using the moral authority of the community to explain to these folks what it is that they're doing. Mothers of murdered children, relatives of crime victims, pastors, anybody who is going to get their attention, ex-offenders who can explain to them what's going to happen to them if they continue doing what they're doing. And then the third component, everybody says, well, if I had a job, I wouldn't have to do this. The third component is to offer social services, which is including jobs. And then if it continues, then we come down on them, then we bring them all in again.
Right. And this has shown tremendous success.
About a third.
Right. High Point, North Carolina, more than High Point, North Carolina is a hot success.
A third is the base.
Is the baseline.
Right.
So from Boston, a baseline, third coming down in narcotics-related violence or gun violence in general. In High Point, North Carolina, 60% drops.
Right.
And so this is a new strategy we're introducing in 2011. It takes a lot of resources.
Right.
So you and I have actually been going out and raising hundreds of thousands of dollars, frankly, to fuel the social service aspect.
It costs a lot of money.
It costs a lot of money. But the key thing we know is if we could intervene in that, and I hear this all the time when I walk neighborhoods, I'll have guys that allegedly are involved in the drug trade and say, this is not great work. We're not making lots of money, and it's dangerous. And you and I know the overwhelming majority of people who are getting shot in our city, upwards of 80+%, are people who are involved in the narcotics trade. And so these folks know that, and if we can provide for them clear pathways to other choices and options, as well as the reality that if you don't change your behavior, not only may you get involved in narcotics-related violence, but you will definitely get arrested.
It's, in a sense, it's a lot like parenting. If you touch the stove, you're going to get burned.
Right. And then letting people know, we know who you are, we're giving you a clear option. If you do not take this option, there will be a consequence. Right. So we're going to be really pushing. This is the thing I'm actually most excited about in 2011. I'm excited about the reorganization of the agency. I'm praying for the success, and you're doing a lot to do with the response time. If we can begin to clear out those calls through educating our residents not to call for a blocked fire hydrant, driveway, etc., and then pull a lot of them out there by using our cameras and other technology that we're using to help reduce the queue. Response time in our city will improve, even though we lost the 164 officers. We have a pathway to improving the response time. But morally with me, why I love this program is a lot of people are out in the streets involved in these games because they think there's no other choices. And this is a program in other cities has shown that we're actually giving you a choice. And we're actually going to put resources. We're raising hundreds of thousands of dollars to get you into real programs connected to work and other assistance that you might need. As opposed to doing what we're doing right now, and you and I know it, we're arresting more and more people, but that's not solving the problem. It's like drinking from a fire hose. It just is not going to stop. So this is probably, to me, one of the more interesting strategies that many people around the state of New Jersey and beyond are really going to watch to see if we can have the same kind of success that they've had in Boston, or more specifically, I like what the kind of success they had in High Point, North Carolina.
Right.
And you're pouring a lot of energy into it. And more importantly, you're not working alone, right?
No. The beauty of, there's a couple of other things about this that you have to realize. It will improve our police-community relations dramatically, because the change comes about when you start explaining to guys who are involved in the game, listen, we don't want to arrest you, we want to help you. If we have to, we will arrest you, but we want to help you, and that's what we're here to do. But this is an initiative that met with Paul Fishman and Bob Lorino last week with David Kennedy to go over this.
Paul Fishman and Bob
Paul
Lorino.
Fishman is the U.S. Attorney for New Jersey, and Bob Lorino is the acting prosecutor.
And I think I talked to
County.
Paul Fishman last week again. So excited about this program.
Yes.
Everybody wants to help because they see that this is a model that can become the norm in American public safety and American policing.
And we're already set up through that VEST initiative, where we have the ATF, the DEA, the FBI, the Essex County Sheriff, the Essex County Prosecutor already sitting around the table to focus on narcotics enforcement. We're already set up to make this succeed, hopefully on a level it hasn't succeeded in this country. David Kennedy himself is very excited about Newark.
Who is an incredible professor at John Jay College. And this is what I like about the strategies we've used, is they're sort of like building blocks.
Yes.
Once you started to change the way we were doing narcotics enforcement, creating that VEST, those people working together, doing much more sophisticated operations, and you and I, through charity, through philanthropic dollars, invested in a lot of technology that's improved the way we're doing surveillance and other things. That was another block to go up. And now we're using what I think is a final evolution of all of this, which is find ways to use our technology, use our surveillance, use our partnerships to stop these guys from getting arrested. It's almost like we want to help you not go to jail. And if you don't, we're going to send you to jail.
Right.
So I want to come back after the break because there's more, actually. The two other things that the agency is doing right now. One, I want to talk a little bit about investments in technology and how successful they have been. And then I want to talk a little bit about the other big media police stories. If you want to talk about the bad stories we've gotten, one has been the 164 police officers layoffs. Now we've addressed that with a real strategy to do something about it. But the other one is this ACLU case, which I think made me lose some hair, made you lose a few inches, because it was a partnership that then suddenly seemed to turn around and be a very frustrating, almost like turning your back on us and throwing grenades before you were inside helping us to fix the problem in the first place. So let's talk about those two things, and then I really want to turn attention to talk to people about what they can do. And that's a great thing right now, and Director, I'm sure you see it. There are really heroic Newarkers out there that are doing a lot to help us. They need to become the model. So
people are stepping up.
People are stepping up. You know, I always believe you have the right to criticize if you have a heart to help. And we're seeing a lot of people, especially in this very tough economic times, who are coming forward to helping. So we've got our director, Gary McCarthy. I want to go to a quick break. I want you to stay tuned. We're going to come back and talk about the ACLU's case. We're going to talk about investments of technology, and especially I want to talk about what you can do in your own neighborhood, in your own community, to help us make a difference. This is Newark, New Jersey. We are strong, we are enduring, we are resilient. And as other cities are facing challenges, from New York City going up in crime and murder this year to other cities, I believe Newark can work through this economic decline and really become, again, like we were between 2006 and 2009, a national model, not seen in any kind of sophisticated policy, but seen in real, everyday results in moving our city forward. We cannot give up. We have to keep pressing on and be what we're called to be, which is the best. We'll be right back on From the Mayor's Desk in a moment.
Studies show our children will face chronic obesity health-related problems like heart disease or asthma if we don't act now. Mayor Cory Booker and the Municipal Council are supporting First Lady Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign to address childhood obesity. So make a healthy choice, your only choice. Walk, swim, or ride a bike.
Hi, this is Mayor Cory Booker, and we are back on From the Mayor's Desk today talking about probably perhaps the most urgent issue in our city, which is public safety. This economic shock that's hitting cities all across America, especially here in New Jersey, has been causing many police departments, north to south, to begin to constrict. Jersey City, Camden, Trenton, Irvington, Patterson, all facing cutbacks in their police departments, and Newark is no different. But what is different is we are making sure that we have a pathway to move forward from crisis to success, to make sure that we continue to set the pace for driving crime down. Now, this has been a very, very difficult year, and we've been talking over this hour with Gary McCarthy about how we're reorganizing the police department to meet the challenges before us. A lot of that is pushing more police officers to the streets, so we don't see any significant diminution of street patrols at all, and have the same number of police officers in our precincts. But in addition to that, a lot of other creative strategies, working on ways to reduce response time with an incredible strategy that the director has brought forward that we see already beginning to reduce about 20% of our response, improve our response time by about 20%. Also partnerships with federal agencies that we didn't have before that are helping us to give more serious penalties on everything from carjacking to shootings. Working with a new, very innovative, I would say enlightened strategy called Ceasefire, which will be unveiling in 2011. It's going to be focused on really empowering people that are involved in the narcotics trade, not just arresting them, but empowering them to make other decisions and get out of that game altogether or face incarceration. We're seeing a lot of progress within our police department, as the director and I have been describing in the first part of this show. But what's very important, as we also recognize, is that we all have a role to play. in this tough time in our country, everybody's got to be stepping up and doing something. So here back with me is Gary McCarthy. Director, thank you for joining with me for this important conversation. And we were talking, you and I, a lot about residents around the city that are stepping up and doing more. And there's a few very clear ways that residents can help. One, and we're seeing this, is more residents organizing their blocks and their neighborhoods, block watches, which very literally means blocks helping out and watching out for key things that are going on that are indications of crime and stopping them in conjunction and partnership with the police.
Yeah, vigilant populations make a difference when it comes to crime. Over the course of, I'm scared to say, my 30 years now in this business, I've seen populations where there's shots fired and we don't get a 911 call. And I've seen other residents where if there's a kid standing on the corner for more than 5 minutes, we get a phone call. So those second groups, the ones that are vigilant, that are on top of conditions, that are always watching, there's always the grandmother in the window with the pillow looking at what's going on the street. And we need to hear from those people. You know, if we don't have the complaints, I can't fix it, whether it comes to police conduct or whether it comes to criminal conduct on the streets.
And I've seen all over the city, really in every ward, we have these blocks, handfuls in some areas, more in others, that are so vigilant and communicate. There's Lower Shepherd Avenue, which is a block association that has a block watch. And I was joking the other day, we had a main break in the South Ward. And next thing you know, my text in my BlackBerry and my Twitter account has residents hitting me literally just moments after my own staff was alerting me to the problem in the first place. It's that kind of vigilance that actually helps. So if somebody wants to say, you know what, I want to organize my block, but I need help, what are they going to do?
Contact the local precinct and ask for the community service officer. Each precinct has a community service officer that specializes in things like building block associations, attending community meetings, fostering them, giving them training and setting them up so that they can help us help them.
Yeah, it's powerful what organized residents can do in reducing crime, and it's something that we really need now more than ever, especially with seeing a lot of these property crimes come to the fore. And we know we're in a tough economy, but we've got to be on top of these property crimes especially and not allow them to happen. And if you see something suspicious, more than you know, if you think something's suspicious, it often is, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and there's no harm in reaching out on those things, none at all. And so the other ways to help out, though, there's one that I think, to me, it's used a lot, but I would think it would be used tip lines. Yeah. I can't understand how in Newark, New Jersey, we have the most lucrative tip lines. We have two different types of tip lines, which we're going to be putting up on the screen here. One is for guns. If you suspect, we're the only city in America, if you suspect someone's carrying an illegal gun, that you just call the number. And if I suspect you're carrying an illegal gun, I don't want the person's name when you call our number. There's no caller ID. It's completely anonymous. We'll give you 4 digits. You give us the information. If we go out and make the arrest, and we don't need a conviction. We just want to recover that gun. You call back. We've done it as quickly as 6 minutes. Right. You get another 4 digits. You take those 8 digits to a number of banks in Newark, and you get $1,000. We're the only city where that happens. If you let us know where a gun is, somebody's got a gun in this apartment, they're holding it here, or somebody's on my street corner, they're carrying a gun, that can get you $1,000 quick, no questions asked. All we're going to be doing is giving you digits that you can use at a bank. It's powerful, and the stories that of its use are pretty incredible, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the best one was we turned one around in like under 6 minutes. Somebody called up, bam, we got the gun. The next thing you know, they got $1,000.
One of my favorite ones was somebody told about it where it was in a house, and we went into the house and found it was an automatic weapon, which to me was really impressive. And sometimes, look, you know, you may think it's not a big deal, but it is. Right. Those weapons are killing people in our community. Absolutely. And if you can make $1,000 with a little bit of information and save a life, it's an incredible thing to do, especially in a down economy. What a great way to make money and contribute to the safety of your community. Right. And then the other tip line is our general tip line, which is for anything and any information. Tell me a little bit about that one.
Mostly people call it for reporting other types of crimes like narcotic sales or burglaries. It's NWK tips. And you can get up to $2,000 based upon the type of crime that you solve. If it's a rape or a murder or something that's really, really serious, then obviously the Police Foundation will bump up the award.
Right. And do you know of any examples that you can remember off the top of your head of that one?
Right now, I don't. We did have a rape that somebody gave up who the person was. we were able to get an arrest and conviction as a result of that.
But if somebody just knows a crew that's going around and doing car break-ins, that's something that we give out money for as well.
Correct, absolutely.
Right? If they know somebody has been even stripping homes and selling wire, copper wire, that's something we give. Scrappers, yeah. We often see that, and we have a big problem, not just in Newark, but across our country, with foreclosures happening, people breaking into the home and stripping them. If you know somebody that's doing that, that's something we'll give tips on. So really, no crime is too small that you're not going to get some kind of payment for.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right. So these are things that help us. Organizing block associations, using tip lines, keeping your eye out of what's going on, calling the police department when you do it. But I want to shift gears a little bit.
It's funded by the Police Foundation.
Right, which is another way anybody can help, actually. We have a police foundation that was created under my leadership that is really funding a lot of pretty significant things in the city. We've been raising private dollars. And this is what people don't realize here in Newark is we realized when we came into office in 2006 it was a massive budget problem, but we had serious public safety needs. So we raised through the Police Foundation money for cameras all over our city. We've raised money from the Police Foundation for gunshot technology. We've even had vehicles to support the police department raised through that. But also the Police Foundation has raised money for gun buyback programs for us, as well as the funding these tip lines. So there's thousands of dollars that we've raised waiting to give out if somebody would just call and say, hey, I know a guy who's got a gun. It's not legal. He keeps it this place, or he's on the street with it there. Or, hey, I witnessed somebody breaking into cars, and I recognize that person. I don't want to give my information, but here's some information on that person to stop them from smashing my neighbor's cars and taking their money. And you can probably find them at this address. Those are things that get you money right away, and that's not coming from taxpayer dollars. That's coming from money that was raised in our police foundation. But the other thing I want to say, which is when people have bad experiences with the police department, there's nothing that frustrates me more when I'm in a community meeting and somebody will raise their hand and say, well, a police officer treated me with this kind of disrespect, and I listened to that, and then I asked them simple questions. Well, what was the officer's name, car number? They don't remember because it was months ago. Well, did you call it in and make a complaint? Did you go and file? And they'd say no. And our frustration as managers, we knew overwhelming majority of our police officers are good people who play by the rules and are producing a lot of results. But in any large agency, you're going to have people that that are not performing well. And we need to, as managers, if we don't know about it, we can't take corrective action.
I have to have those complaints reported. And just for the record, Mayor, we've got 2 separate systems that we're using now. Well, actually 3. We just implemented an annual evaluation for every police officer, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and deputy chief. Every member of the agency is going to receive an annual evaluation. And within that evaluation, they will be measured and held accountable for things like number of complaints and their behaviors with the community.
And this is what's really important, because people don't realize this. Even if you make a complaint and it's not substantiated, that officer isn't charged or anything like that, that stays in their file. And so if you see a pattern during your reviews, this person's gotten 15 complaints saying sort of the same thing, then that's an opportunity for you to take some corrective action as well.
And we really didn't have that opportunity in the past because we weren't tracking it with an annual evaluation. So we just implemented this last year. The second thing that's really important is that even if we have an officer who receives a number of complaints and is not convicted in a department trial and found guilty, we still have training and supervision mechanisms in place now through an employee monitoring program that we didn't have before either. We just implemented this system where if you get 3 complaints in this amount of time, you go into this monitoring system. We get training, a lot of supervision. If you get more complaints, you go into the next level. There's 3 separate levels. That's all independent of the disciplinary system. At any time, an officer can be found guilty and discipline taken.
You've been taking a lot of strides over the last 3 years to implement these new systems to hold our police officers accountable. It's critical that people make calls if they have complaints so we can get better as an agency and not just say, ah, it's just the police. And I love your training. I love the things that are coming out, calling selling the stop. I love this new concept. I never knew about it until I became mayor and started working with you, which is just because a police officer pulls you over, there's conduct of that police officer that he thinks he shouldn't do, but there's also things he could do or she could do to make you a better believer. This is new training that you're doing. Very important in the little time we have left, though. How do you make a complaint? I had a bad experience with an officer I want to make a complaint. How do I do that?
You can make a complaint at any department facility. You could do it via telephone, or you could do it in person. And we've put a couple of management controls in place. First of all, when I got here, I was told that people were not recording complaints. People would go to make complaints.
Yeah.
We started doing integrity testing, sending people into precincts, making phone calls, making complaints, and our compliance was only at about 70%. Now it's at 100%, because guess what? The people who didn't take the complaints got disciplined. Word went out across the agency. Now it's the rare occasion
which is amazing to think about that. Before we came in and started doing this together, all the complaints weren't being taken until we started sending people out there to test the system, and now it's gotten a lot better. So please, if you have a bad experience with a police officer, make a complaint. I wanted some time to talk about the ACLU. Frustrating thing I'll just summarize now in the short period of time we have is they were working with us as partners, making a lot of progress, even complimenting you publicly, and the next thing you know, they're calling for a federal monitor. We don't turn down help from anybody, but that's just not the way to go, right?
No, because the management controls that we're implementing far and above anything that other people are doing across the country. They took a whole bunch of stuff, threw it together, threw it at the wall, and said, okay, we have all these allegations, we have lawsuits that are filed, we have settlements, and because of that, we think they need a federal monitor. It's what the ACLU does across the country.
Right. So I want to just first of all thank you for being here. We're going to come back after the break with there's so many people in our community, so many people in Newark who are stepping up and taking real exciting actions to stop crime. And one of the groups we're going to have right next is a group called Stop Shooting. We'll be back with them, but I really want to thank you, Director McCarthy. You're showing sort of courageous work. You're fighting forward. These are difficult circumstances and very difficult times. All across the country, people are struggling, but you, like a laser beam, are focused on the progress we need to make. You come up with strategies and plans that are helping us advance the agency. This is going to be a very difficult 6 months ahead, but I am confident with you and the police officers we have working with the community, we cannot lose.
It's a very critical time in our history, and I got to tell you, Mayor, I'm pleased to be here.
All right, thank you very much for your leadership. We'll be right back with an incredible group represented by an incredible gentleman, people standing up in the city of Newark, not complaining, not talking about the problems, but doing something about it. We'll be right back from the Mayor's Desk. Hi, I'm Newark Mayor Cory Booker. 2011 is going to be a year to go Newark. Why? Well, for the first time, Newark is going to have nearly 100 big league sporting events played in our city. The Devils, the Nets, the Liberty. Oh, and did I mention March Madness is coming to Newark? That's right, the road to the Final Four goes right through Brick City. The Prudential Center is hosting the NCAA Men's Basketball East Regionals, starting March 25th. So whether you're from Newark or just visiting, whether you are a sports fan or not, Newark's got it all in 2011. Check out GoNewark.com. You don't want to miss it. Hi, this is Mayor Cory Booker, back now talking about perhaps the most urgent issue in our city, which is public safety. We've had Director Gary McCarthy on talking about law enforcement strategies and things going on with the police department. But understand this, the police will not get the job done in total. It has to be a marriage between police activism, innovation, technology, but more importantly, it has to be also a community stepping up and working together to make a difference. I'm very blessed to be joined with one of those guys representing an organization that has been a real partner with us in the city in helping to reduce violence. He's a guy that knows it well in terms of what's going on out there in the community and what needs to be done about it. He's one of those friends I really value because he never sugarcoats things to me. He tells me what's going on, what's happening, and gives me very raw about what he thinks needs to be done. But again, I love when people say, Mayor, this is what needs to get done, and this is what I am doing. Would you please welcome to the show Yusuf Ismail. Yusuf, thanks
a
for
lot,
coming.
man.
No.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here.
No, I appreciate you. I appreciate you on a lot of different levels. And I was teasing you before we got in here because I want people to hear your story and who you are, what's your background. How did you get to be doing what you're doing? And then we'll get into Stop Shooting.
Okay, man. Well, I wasn't always on this side of the fence. There was a time when I was part of the problem and not the solution. All I gained from the streets was a 5-year prison sentence and 5 gunshot wounds from 3 different incidents. My last and most serious incident back in 2002, I woke out of a coma in UMD&J Hospital with a tube stuck in my throat and several tubes attached to my body. I spent a total of 6 weeks laid up in a hospital bed. During my stay, through a series of operations and procedures, I was treated for all types of different things: diaphragm laceration, liver laceration, colon injury, a number of different things. The doctors named me the walking miracle when I finally came back to consciousness. And believe it or not, I actually gained something from this experience, because it was in this time of crisis, during the darkest hours of my life, that I found God. And this is just, you know, a snapshot of what kind of led me to get out the streets. I learned my lesson with that one. I told myself I would never go back out into the streets, and I just really wanted to give back to the community. I seen that there was a void out there, a lack of role models out there, positive role models. I mean, when I was coming up, you know, the only role models, male role models that we would have respected in the community in Baxter Terrace were drug dealers, big time gangsters like Akbar and, you know, Hilton Halls. You know, those were the people that we looked up to, because that was the strength in the community. And coming up as a kid, you know, you're susceptible to that.
Right.
So that's who we looked up to, and we thought that that was the right thing to do.
And so what's powerful, man, about you, to me, is, so some people have that realization, I need to get out of the game, I'm turning to God. But you went even further. You're like, I'm not only going to get out of the game, but I'm going to get out there and try to get other people out as well. And you talked about it, because I think it's so true. Kids will always look up to strength in their community. And if that strength is represented by community leadership, a strength is exemplified by, you know, we all had that senior woman in the community that held people together. You know, the Carolyn Wallaces of our city, the Miss Shabazes of our community. But you now want to be that strength as well. And so when you had this sort of turnaround and didn't just decide to get out, many people get out and get away, you said, I'm going to come right back and be that strength. What were those first steps that you took to try to be that strength in the community?
Well, it was definitely hard. It's not an easy process. Changing is one of the hardest processes ever. Many nights I fought the demons off of going back out into the streets. You know, when I wasn't working, had 2 daughters to take care of. So the demons were always trying to pull me back in. But luckily I had a support system. I had my mother who stood by me, who told me, even like I said, when I was at the lowest point of my life, she told me that you can be great. You know, and I finally started to believe it. So that support system was definitely powerful. That's definitely needed for anybody who wants to change. It was the support system, and I just really, it was the drive and the passion of not going back out into the streets and just wanting to be a beacon of light for other people to see, to be an example for people to follow, you know.
But those are 2 points that are so critical. So one, you had to make a decision in your own heart, but nobody can do it alone. Neither you nor I are islands unto ourselves. We're all here because we had people supporting us, and that's what frustrates me right now in Newark. You know, something simple like Big Brother, Big Sister program in the city of Newark. There's a waiting list for mentors. You know, mothers who are single mothers who are working 2 jobs who would love to get a positive male role model for their son's life, and we're not stepping up. But you stepped up in a way of fighting through the temptations, fighting through the challenges, because you and I both know, we've talked about this before, for a guy coming back from prison, it's not an easy road. No. We're going to do another show about some of the successes we're having in Newark helping guys, but even with all the programs we have going on, it's still not an easy road. So you were able to fight through all of that, and then you became part of an organization called Stop Shooting. What is that organization, and tell us a little bit more about what it does?
Well, right now, Stop Shooting is like a movement right now. We are one of the leading anti-gang and gun violence organizations in the community. Our mission is to assist in reversing the trend of senseless gun violence by providing alternatives for at-risk young people. So I came together with a group of friends, Al Tariq Anque and Fred Ruiz. We already were tired of our former lives, and we were doing different things in the community, coaching basketball teams, raising money to take kids on trips and things of that nature. And then Fred's mother actually got shot by a stray bullet in Baxter Terrace as she looked out of her second floor window. So that was kind of the rallying cry that made us say, you know, enough is enough. It's time for somebody to step up, and it's time for somebody to, you know, show these young people out here that there's another way. So that continues to be our rallying cry. Sonia, who was like our mother as well, you know, so we came together, we decided to start the organization. We started just by simply selling buttons and shirts just to take kids on trips and things of that nature. Then we started a basketball program. Then it just started really snowballing into a whole lot more than we could ever imagine. Yeah. Like, I would never imagine that I'd be here right now with the mayor. You know, things like that, and that's definitely an honor, and things like that keep me going. And I want, as I talked about those negative role models earlier, I want young people to see that somebody who came from the same place that they came from, you can be successful being positive.
So so first of all, let me flip that on you, because I'm honored to be sitting here with you, and you inspire me and challenge me, I think, to do more from my job. But let's just now, this is where I want to have a conversation, almost like the cameras aren't here, how you and I might talk. I'm gonna tell you something right now, and I had the police director here earlier. We drove down shootings in the city of Newark 4 years in a row. You and I both know it wasn't just the police out there. Mm-hmm. This was great years, 7, 8, especially after the 4 kids got shot in Mount Vernon. Yeah. We saw a spike in activism, people out there in the streets, people doing some positive things, a lot of good grassroots organizations working with us to start reducing violence. Year after year, came 4 years down, and now we're here in this tough year. And let's talk about what we were talking about off the camera. We are seeing for the first time in 4 years, shootings start to go up a little bit in the city of Newark, and that's got me very worried, very concerned. And you were saying some of the cause of that, but I didn't ask you some of the cure to that. That's not about the police department. So tell me what you think is going on out there in the streets right now from your grassroots perspective, and then more importantly, tell me what you think the cure is.
There's a saying that goes in this. I think it was created by Father Boy, who runs an organization in Los Angeles called Homeboy Industries. Nothing stops a bullet faster than a job.
Right.
And I know we're in tough economic times and people losing their jobs all over the country. You know, this is just tough times. But, you know, we have to remain vigilant and, you know, try our best to stimulate the Newark economy to make sure, look, every Newarker who wants to work can, you know, be afforded the opportunity to work for a livable wage, because 90% of these quote-unquote gangsters or gang members or what have you, they will leave the life in a second if they could be afforded a decent job with a livable wage to be able to take care of their family.
So you gave me that strong dose of truth as a mayor. We got to get jobs going, economic activity, because you said it's gotten harder to do the narcotics trade, because frankly, what the directors and the heat coming down on the narcotics trade in the city of Newark is pushing things down. But we're seeing it pop in robberies and stuff like that, because these guys still have to find a way to get money. And so when you have a double-digit unemployment rate, not just in Newark, all across the country, guys got to find a way to make it. So your cure is economic opportunity, right?
Yes.
And that goes both ways, because not only do we have to get more jobs, but I see this, and I know you see this too, is that I've had guys come to my house before, okay, and ask them, but a lot of guys are not passing drug tests. A lot of guys are, and I've seen this happen too many times, will show up for the first week and then not follow through. So it's kind of a meeting both ways. Guys like me have got to fight, and this is why we're trying to work so hard to bring a hotel here. This is why we're looking hard to bring a supermarket here, get a couple more buildings built. But it also has to be us preparing ourselves for the opportunities, right?
Exactly. I mean, we talk a lot about capacity building in the nonprofit world. Well, we need a lot more capacity building going. We need to build the capacity of people. It's not, you're right, it's not just jobs, it's training. And that's why Stop Shooting, we stress a lot about economic development and entrepreneurship, because, you know, just the what's going on in the country. Jobs are going down, so we need an influx of entrepreneurs as well.
Right.
And we need a lot more support for our small local businesses who will be able to train and hire people in order to make our streets safer.
So this is Mayor Booker, and we're talking with Yusef Ismail, who is really a hero to me, not only within his own personal story, but what you're committed to doing. And I love having this kind of dialogue, and I love having your partner, Al Tariq Anquay, in my face all the time, because he may work for me. I often feel like I'm working for him. But I mean, this is the kind of thing that enriches my job as mayor. It makes me better, having guys like you out there around, but also working with me and holding me accountable. And so I just want to say, as we we end this actually show, that this is Newark. You are Newark. You're up from these bricks. You've seen the toughest part of the bricks, but you're heroic now because you're standing up telling the truth, but not with your words, but with your example. And this is really what we need. And we need public policy, and this is what we're going to be talking about in some other shows. Ex-offender reentry programs, job training programs. I'm looking forward to a show we're going to be doing about the building boom that we're going to be seeing in Newark in 2011, because we're going to be breaking ground on a lot of projects. But then you and I have worked together also about making sure that our people get hired on these projects, laborer jobs and things like that. So there's a lot of work to do. But this is the time, I say, in a tough economy, this is the time that we need people standing up and saying, you know what, I'm not going to throw stones, I'm not going to stand back and criticize, I'm going to roll up my sleeves, what can I do to help somebody? And everybody can do something, even if it's just mentoring a young person, even if it's just supporting a grassroots organization like yours. There's something for all of us to do to help drive down crime in the city of Newark. And if we have that kind of rise in community action, we're going to have that kind of decline in crime combined with the things that our director are doing. It's not the community versus somebody, it's all of us working together. And so I just want to thank Yusef one more time. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks a lot.
And I just want to thank the viewing public for watching this, probably one of the most important shows we've done from the Mayor's Desk about public safety, but really a holistic vision of that, from the police department to community leaders to you. This is Newark, New Jersey. This is Brick City, and we are going to continue the progress here. This is not a hope. I believe it's our destiny to set the national example for urban transformation in public safety, economic empowerment, and taking back our communities. So thank you very much. I want to thank again Yusef and our police director for being the guests on this show. We'll be back with more from the Mayor's Desk on important issues on how to move Newark forward. Thank you very much.